Welcome to Navigating Life After 40, the podcast that's all about helping women navigate this exciting and sometimes challenging phase of life. I'm your host, Roni J, and I'll be here sharing some of my own personal experiences, chatting with experts and a few friends, and also providing some practical advice and support to help you live your best life after 40. Let's get started. Welcome to the podcast, Stacey. How are you today?
Oh, I'm wonderful, Ronnie. Thank you so much for having me.
Nice. I love it. Thank you. I'm so delighted to have you here so that we can talk about a very important discussion today on taking leaps of faith. But before we hop into that discussion, I would love for us to kick things off so that our listeners can learn a little bit more about you. And we'll start that with an icebreaker. How does that sound?
I'm game. I'm so game. I think
Yes.
this sounds so much fun. Like, throw it at me.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. So, if you could take a leap of faith, related to our topic, and try any new adventure or passion project without any risk of failure, what would it be and why?
I love this question. Okay, so immediately skydiving came out of in my head, and I'm like, wait, I don't really want to be skydiving right now in my kind of menopausal state. However, I don't know, maybe that I need to challenge my leap a little bit, because the other thing is I have this desire, it's like burning in me somewhere, to be an artist, like paint and travel the world and just have amazing things inspire me, and just like big, I don't know where this comes from, but it's like these big, huge, whatever I would create, and just being able to travel and be inspired and all of that, to me, oh, I love to do that.
Yes, I love that. And it made me think about your background because I love your background. It
Thank
just
you.
has, I'm not sure if you painted that or if that's something you did, but it's so
I
beautiful.
Thank you. You know, it's so funny. Everybody asks me, did you paint that? And I wish the answer was yes, because it would be a really cool answer. However, I purchased this thing. It's huge. It's very, very large. And I remember when I bought it, I went into the store. I was looking for something else, and it's this big, great, like graffiti love on a wall that is with a bunch of, like, I don't know, art, like a bowl of apples or something.
Yeah.
And it called to me. You know, when you have those moments, I mean, that's leap of faith, right? Things called to you, and it
Yeah.
called to me, and I was like, this is perfect. So I love it how it's a little edgy too, because I think when we start talking about love, I don't know, sometimes we can default to it's okay, it's always happy and sunshiny and bright. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
part of it. And love also, to me, holds the space for it to be messy and sad and whatever else we're going through as well too. So
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned the messiness, that part, because we're going to really dive into that today too and touch on the messiness of
I'm
life. And
in.
so, yeah. So, yeah, thank you for playing that with me. If you ever travel the world and you decide to follow that dream, I would love to hear more about it. I could
What's
definitely
yours,
reach out and
Ronnie?
share more.
Have you shared the answer to that question
Ah,
before
I
for
have
you?
not,
Hmm.
but if I could do this, I would say I would probably, very similar to yours, just travel the world. I would travel the world. I would probably design. I love to design things, as you can kind of see behind me. I love to
Yes.
design things, but I would travel the world. I would probably knock everything off of my bucket list. I would love to just have like this endless flow of money so I could do all of these things. But
Right.
that's what I would say. I would travel the world and probably
I love
design some
that.
things that I love, that's always
Yeah.
like in my head and I'm putting on paper. I would love to bring those things to life
Yeah.
and just have the finances to be able to do whatever it is I wanted to do. So I would probably say that would
Thank you.
be my adventure, because those are things that are a passion of mine, traveling and designing things. So
Yeah. And there's so
yeah.
much inspiration when you go new places. I always feel
Yes.
like when we feel a little stuck sometimes, I'm like, just go, it doesn't have to be some big trip, but go somewhere new or different. If you always work in your office, go to the coffee shop or
Mm-hmm.
go to the local library or do something where you mix up your environment. Because there's so much in
Yes.
it, like I was saying, I don't know what it is, but it's like the energy shifts and it just, I get solutions or ideas in places where I'm like, oh, just driving down the road, listening to some music,
Yeah.
having a good time.
Yeah, I guess you have to get out of that norm, that environment at
Yeah.
home and get
Hmm.
into a different space. And it's like your mind just opens up to these new
Yeah.
possibilities and ideas that you had. And you're just like, man, I could do that. I have the same
Hmm.
thing. I can be driving down the street and my mind will start going, oh, that's a great idea. I can't write it down now because I'm driving. So I hope
Right?
I remember it. So when
I
I
say
get,
the same
yeah.
thing. Please, whoever's holding the larger container with me, please make sure I can remember this an hour from now.
Yes. Yes, because it's so easy to like
Oh,
those
go
thoughts
on
will
to the
go
next
so
thing.
fast.
Exactly.
Mhm. Yeah. So I would love to dive into your incredible journey and wealth of experience in helping women to stop settling and to really go after what really lights them up, because I know that's something that you have been doing in your work as a coach.
For
And
sure.
speaking of your work as a coach, your journey has taken you from education to coaching.
Yes.
And I was wondering, could you share a specific turning point or a moment of clarity that deeply influenced your decision to pursue coaching?
Hmm. Okay, so I have the answer because I know exactly when it happened.
I love this.
I was signed up for a class or a call or I don't know, something with two life coaches. And I really didn't know a whole lot about life coaches at the time, but
Hmm.
the vibe just there was one of the coaches kind of like she did these big trips. Speaking of travel, she did these big trips to like Italy and all over the world. And at the time I was still my corporate job. And I said to my now husband, we weren't married at the time, I said,
Hmm.
I think I want to go to Italy with this person. He was like, have you met her before? And I was like, no, but you know, when something, and this is what leaps of faith are all about, there's something that pings you in your heart that
Yes.
it doesn't make rational or logical sense, right? To say, okay, what have you. Now, he did offer me some wisdom. He said, well, does she have anything else like on a smaller scale? So you could test it out first to make sure this really is like what you want to do. And she did. She had an event. It was kind of like the turn of the year. She had an event in
Hmm.
January in Atlanta. And it was like, I don't know, start your year, some whatever, some life
Hmm.
coachy topic.
Hmm.
And I knew nobody. I don't generally always enjoy traveling by myself. And I was like, it doesn't matter. I'm doing this thing.
Yeah.
And I booked the plane ticket, hotel, you name it, and flew down there. And there was probably, I don't know, 30, 40 women in that room. And we all went around at the kind of at the beginning and it was like, why are we here? And I'm not a shy person, although in that moment, it, like all of a sudden, all my words, I lost everything. And I was
Yeah.
like, why am I here? And I got up and I said, my life's pretty good. If you looked at it from the outside, people would say, you know, that's not a bad life you've got going on. There's something more underneath that that's pinging me. And I don't want to just go on autopilot the rest of my life
Hmm.
and and not really explore whatever this ping is.
Yeah.
And so I said it out loud. And then a woman from another table came over and she said, Stace, she goes, I have a question for you. And she said, if you could do whatever you wanted and you knew it was going to work out, what would you do right now? Not a year from now, not five, like right now. And I said, I know this sounds odd, although it didn't because this is a room full of life coaches. I was like, I would go home and sign up for life, like a life coaching school program. I'd already been looking a little bit. And
Hmm.
she said, do it. And it wasn't, Ronnie, that I needed somebody to tell me what to do. It was almost like my own, like it was like she channeled my own permission to myself, right? That
Yeah.
here's this thing, I'm in corporate, life coaching really wasn't even, I mean, in certain smaller circles, but it didn't have the national awareness that maybe it does now, 10 years later.
Yeah.
And to explain it to my family, to explain it to my, boyfriend at the time. Like, I want to do this. I have no idea what it's going to be about. And I plopped down, it's a lot of money, plopped down a big amount of money. And 2 weeks in, I said to myself, I would have paid double. I was like, when you're in a moment where all of a sudden just feel home, you feel like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been searching for my whole
Yes.
life.
Yes.
And
Mm.
so just taking the leap, right? Like taking the leap to go to Atlanta, taking the leap to get up and speak a truth in front of a room full of strangers, taking the leap to say what like each piece, I think sometimes we imagine that it's like one big gesture.
Mhm.
However, to me, I find that whenever we're following these pings, breadcrumbs, your heart, your whatever that is, deep, deep within us, to me, it's always these little tiny steps that almost seem, a lot of times, they don't even seem like that big of a deal. But
Yeah.
as you put them together, they take you in a completely different trajectory than wherever you were.
Yes, I love that story. It sounds like you had this nudge. And I remember
Mhm.
interviewing someone else in my last season, and there was something that she said that has always stuck out to me. And that is, don't die with the music still inside of you.
Oh, Wayne Dyer,
And
that's his quote. Yeah, it's
yes,
amazing, right?
and I was just like, I love that. And it just stuck with me
Mhm.
and it resonated with me. And it made me remember there are things that you truly desire to do and that are kind of pushing and tugging you in that
Yeah.
direction. And you want to make sure that before you leave this earth that you're able
Mhm.
to really explore what that is. And a lot of
Yeah.
times we allow fear to get in the way. And it sounds like in your situation, you were just like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to do
Mhm.
this. And you found your path and what works for you. And I love
Yeah.
to hear that and how that nudge, that little nudge
Yeah.
that was right there, it ended up leading into something that's just amazing for you. So I love to hear
Yeah.
that, to hear
Yeah,
what
and I
you just
think
shared. Yeah.
I think when you start talking about fear too, I
Mm-hmm.
think at least all my clients are always like, tell me how to get rid of the fear. And I said, I
Yeah.
really actually think we're going to walk with it our whole lives in some
Yes.
fashion. It's not that we're going to get over a fear and finally then the signal is going to be like, okay, now is the time. I always love to say it's like there is no perfect time. You are going to choose in a moment that this is the moment. When I got
Mm-hmm.
divorced years and years ago in my first marriage, I spent a lot of time like, do I want to be like really afraid? Do I want to do this? And what does it mean? And I think that again, everybody's looking for that one clear space where, I don't know, the seas of fear part. And we
Yes.
all of a sudden, here it is. And I was like,
Yes.
I don't know, spoiler alert, it hasn't happened like that for me. Gotta be in the
I love
fear
it.
too.
Yes, because I think a lot of people think that it's going to be perfect. I'm not going to have fear.
Yeah.
I'm going to have this boldness to just jump all in and do the thing
Hmm.
that I really want to do.
Hmm.
And that's just not the case. And I
No.
really don't think anybody that has been successful in any area can say they did not have some fear
Yeah.
and they just decided, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm not going to allow
Yeah.
this to stop me. To me, fear is one of those emotions that's kind of natural, but it's what are
Mhm.
you going to do with it? Are you going to allow it
Mhm.
to control you, or are you going to basically
Mhm.
control it and move it out of the way?
Yeah.
So, thank you for sharing your story. And speaking of how you do work with your clients, I am curious
Yeah.
to know
Ah.
when it comes to leaps of faith,
Mhm.
how do you define that in the context of personal growth and transformation? You shared a little bit
Mhm.
about your story and also some of what you've done with your clients in terms of helping them overcome those fears. But how do
Mhm.
you define leaps of faith in this context?
So I had a client a long time ago who came to me and she said, "I don't wear sleeveless shirts in the summer."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, why not? She goes, because my arms jiggle or whatever the answer was. And I was like, are you hot? Do you want to wear a sleeveless
Yeah.
shirt? She's like, yeah, but I can't do it. Right. It's like she was shaming her. Right. And
Mhm.
so it was a huge leap for her to start to give herself permission to kind of claim her body and it's not right for anybody else's judgment or what have you, and walk
Yeah.
through her own judgment. So it could be a really small thing. And I don't mean that was small because then it does ripple out. But it's,
Mm-hmm.
to me, leaps of faith are when you're trusting your own inner guidance system and using that to live, generally speaking, over the like land of the shoulds and the lands of this is the right way, this is how I should do it. So many people come to me and say, I've been successful, right, by the world's
Mm-hmm.
standards, and I'm not happy. I feel,
Yeah.
and they want to do something, but what happens is it's like if I follow my heart or however we want to, describe or characterize that. If I do that, then I'm going to have to give up. Right? I'm not going to make any money. I'm not going to be successful. Nobody's going to get me. I'm going to be rejected by my friend. Like that's the huge fear, right? That there's
Yeah.
no way. And I always say, well, first of all, we're not going to do anything yet because that's the other big fear is as soon as you say it out loud, oh, I'm going to have to do this now. And I always say,
Yeah.
let's just get curious and explore some of this and what it's bringing up for you, and we're not going to do anything yet. And I think most people take a really long exhale when they hear that, because I think part of not saying it out loud to themselves or to somebody that's witnessing them is really about being afraid that once you say it, you're
Yeah.
going to have to, and you might not want to yet. And I always say, hey, everybody's on their own timetable. And I would never, and I don't want to push anybody over
Yes.
an edge. And only you can decide that, only you know what's best for you.
Yeah. So it sounds like really meeting people where they are and then
Yeah.
helping them move from point A to point B, but you're not doing it in a way that's going to say, you know what, I'm going to like push you
Yeah.
in this direction.
No, it
You're
doesn't work.
allowing,
It should people
yeah, it
shut
doesn't
down,
work.
right? Your nervous
Yeah.
system, all the things. And you know what's interesting too, Ronnie, is so often people come to me for they want to go, let's say, from point A to point B. That's what
Mm-hmm.
they have a focus, they think they know, and they're like, this is what I want. I want a new
Yes.
job, I want to move, I want to be in a relationship, I want to be out of a relate, whatever. They have a very, very specific goal in mind or vision in mind. I will have to say most people, when they really start to explore it for themselves, wind up A to, I don't know, W or some other like completely different place.
Yes. Yeah.
And because when you like you're saying, when you let go of control, when you let go of the plan, there's something I think even more delightful that can come through if we're not trying, right? That part of our brain that's like, oh, I need to know the next 10 steps and I need to know this is going to work out. And so it's planned, step by step by step. When you start to let go and you trust whatever is coming through, number one, you can navigate it. Number two, you can
Mm-hmm.
wield it in ways that are absolutely aligned with what you want to be doing on the planet. It changes the game that they didn't even realize. People say that to me all the time. Clients will say, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize,
Yes.
right, that that's not even what I really truly wanted. I thought it was. And hey, there's no judgment about that. If that's what's bringing you to the change, that's the first step.
Yes. Yes. I love that. Would you say, because we know that, of course, a lot of women like to be in control of things and we want to
Mhm.
control the trajectory of our lives. There's a hard time letting go and just going with the flow. When I think about leaps of faith, I think about there's a scripture in the Bible that says faith without works is dead. I think about that.
Mhm.
And for many, they think, well, it's going to come to me, it's going to fall in my lap. They wait for
Mhm.
that, or they want to just kind of control the narrative. And I heard you say that a lot of your clients have learned to just really just let go. And when they let go,
Mhm.
they find the real answer to what
Yeah.
it is that they thought they were looking for, but this is the actual answer. I knew what I initially wanted because, again, this is the direction I'm going. I'm going to drive this car to this destination, only to find out that I'm going to be taking a detour a little bit.
Exactly.
Which
Wait, I landed completely in a different place. Well, how did that
in a
happen?
completely different state. I thought I was going to go to
Yep.
Mexico. Now I'm in
Yep.
Arizona.
Totally.
So when it comes to taking leaps of faith, would you say that some of the common fears that come up for women have been maybe control or this fear of not knowing what's going to
Mhm.
happen along the journey? What would you say
Mhm.
are some of those common fears or even misconceptions that women have?
I definitely think everybody I've ever worked with, and I've worked with a lot of people now over the years, nobody says, yeah, I just want to like surrender. Like we all
Mm-hmm.
go screaming and kicking around, allowing, surrendering. And I think a lot of times the misconception around surrender and letting go is it will not happen. If I don't
Yes.
control it, if I don't keep pushing it forward, it's not going to actually happen. I remember I was getting coached one time years ago, and the woman said to me, she said, half of you is like laying down in the river, like just enjoying the float or the moving and whatever. And the other half of you is like in a rowboat, rowing your little, the hands off, trying to get down the river because you need to be there for at a certain time for a certain
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And I think that that is it, right? Like this deep kind of soul wisdom, body wisdom that we have that says, like, you don't have to grind your way through. It
Yes.
can be a lot easier. But that's where I think a lot of us, myself, again, on my own journeys, we rub up against this idea that, again, we've been dipped in this world from the time we came out. And it's like, what did you do today? How did you work? What kind of grades did you get? It's
Mm-hmm.
all about performance, performance, performance. And that mindset, like to your point of like, can you just sit around and wait? Well, if you're not actually tapping into whatever it is you're really truly like, if you're just kind of checked out of life, which I've done as well too in my life, it's
Mm-hmm.
like there's an energy there too. But it's this self trust. I think that's the hardest piece. And it involves the surrender. And I think also too, there's this fear of not being enough, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
so many women are like, but who am I to go travel the world and be an artist? Or who am
Yes.
I to, want to do these things? And I think, I don't know, I think a lot of women have felt so out of control in so many circumstances that this feels as much as we can try to, at least this is my own life story, as much as I could try to control things, because the unknown felt so dangerous. I grew up with
Mm-hmm.
childhood trauma and things. And so it's like you don't want to be in the unknown. That felt so like, oh my gosh, something could blindside me and this would not be a good thing. And
Yeah.
I think even if you haven't had major trauma, although I don't know, most people in life have had some level of trauma and experience, there's a natural inclination for some self protection.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between being a little afraid of traveling to a city where you don't know and navigating all that, and just sitting in your house and just not letting yourself give yourself permission to do the things you really want to do. So there's all of these pieces to what can kind of get in the way that people will call fear or anxiety. And it's like we have to just almost have to pull like the threads apart to see
Mm-hmm.
what's going on. But I absolutely 100% agree with you about the control and the like, who am I to be doing this kind of thing that usually comes up, because whatever it usually is feels like they're breaking some kind of rule,
Yeah.
the world at large's rule, their family's rule, their, whatever that is, their own way of how they thought it was going to go. And when you do that, you're right, you're in the unknown. And it could be dangerous and it could be the most wild,
Mm-hmm.
delightful place. And to me, once you're willing to be in the space of that energy and navigate it, I think that there's a grounding that almost comes. We're trying to to create safety by having some of these things outside of us tell us you're okay, you're safe, you have enough money. And really, honestly, besides this moment we're in right now, none of us really have a guarantee.
That is true. That is very true. We don't really have a guarantee. As you were talking, it made me think about guilt. Guilt came up for me. Do you notice that some of the clients that you serve, that there's a lot of guilt that maybe comes up as well, feeling guilty for really following the thing that they really want to do because they may
Yeah.
say, I'm a mom. How do I do this when I have kids? Or I'm a wife? Or there's just this guilt that I will feel
Yeah.
bad if I really follow my dream and not, spend this time helping, again, my children get to where they need to be,
Mhm.
or my husband get to where they need to be. Do you notice a lot of guilt that comes up as
Yes,
well?
you're spot on. I think that's one of the first things that comes up. I can't do that. My
Yeah.
family needs me. I've got to do this. And again, I think for so many of us, we think it's either or.
Mhm.
And I get it because it's like, oh, that's not for me. And so it's just, I'm going to stay over here in this identity in this role, which is amazing. It's amazing to be a mother on the planet and be taking care of a family. My work in the world is always where's the and?
Yeah.
Because if there is something that's calling to you, that I just feel like there's space. And it might be, again, that we just explore it here. I've had people explore things with me and then nothing happened. They were in a space
Mhm.
where they were like, Stacey, as much as you helped me, like it wasn't, the timing wasn't quite right. And then 5 years later, I have had clients reach out and like, Stacey, you're never going to believe. Anytime they say that, I always like, I will be the believer because this happens all the time.
Yeah.
But that lays a foundation because we have also been told, particularly as women, it's selfish to
Mhm.
take care of ourselves, to do things first. And my favorite thing, like the Wayne Dyer quote around the music, my favorite thing is when you choose you and you're really doing something from this beautiful space, everyone around you flourishes. You give everyone
Mhm.
permission to honor their own nudges wherever they're going. And so that's like head explode. Most people go, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Most of the women are like, wait, because what we hear, what we've said to ourselves is it's detrimental to everybody when I choose myself. So it's like we have to
Mhm.
start to break some of those things apart. And again, whose voice is that? Is it a parent's voice? Is it a teacher or a coach's voice? People usually can pinpoint when they started to hear that. And then again, the
Mhm.
world reinforces it for us. And so, you have to start to say, hey, there's a lot of beliefs out there. There's a lot of thoughts, even that we're all carrying. Which ones? I would say, how's it working for you?
Yeah. Yeah. How's it
Right? If
working? Yeah.
if you're taking care of your family and you're exhausted and you're resentful, right, underneath the surface, then
Mhm.
you know what? You could stay that way. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong. I'm just saying, what if there's another way where you can play with this idea that you can absolutely claim what you want to claim in your life and be a phenomenal mother. And it might look different, right, than however it's set up now. But I also think it empowers and does something to the whole family.
Mhm.
Be-
I think that should be like this mantra. Like women, we need one. A
yeah.
quote that when you are doing those things to care for yourself and really following your dream and your passion and you're happy, then it shows up in other places. I'm sure you guys are great moms now, but you can be a better mom, better wife, better
Yeah.
friend. It's going to show up in other areas. And as you mentioned, we have been taught to basically put everybody else first. And it's almost like confining us to a box and to play inside of the lines instead of coloring
Yeah.
outside of the lines. And
It's so true.
I wish that we just I don't know. I just wish that women that we could just all just say, you know what, this is what I want for me. I wish it was that easy
Hmm.
for us to just say that and just live in
Yeah.
it and walk in it. And be the best version of ourselves so that we can be
Well,
great for everyone else.
and
Yeah.
I think what happens, this is kind of I think it's a lie that we tell, a lot of us tell ourselves.
Hmm.
I will do this when my kids are graduated, my kids are out of
Yes.
the house, when my kids are settled in, right? And I say that if you want to play the if when game, if this happens, when this happens, you're going to be chasing some future ideal, right? That the timing in 5 years is going to be better. And maybe it is. I'm not
Hmm.
saying that that
Yeah.
situation's not true for some people. But what I'm saying is what I have found in my own life. I'm going to be happy when I'm making a certain dollar amount. I was happy for two
Hmm.
seconds and then I wanted something else. Or I'm going to be happy when I lose 20 pounds or whatever the case may be. And then I lose it. And then, oh, I need
Yeah.
to lose 5 more, right? It's this cycle we get ourselves in where somehow we've said to ourselves that the future, not now, not in this moment, but the future has the possibility to
Hmm.
create this happiness. And what I say is, it's like we get a little hit of that if we get whatever it is, and it doesn't last because we're linking that to something that's a moving target. It's outside of our control. We could
Yes.
lose a job, we could gain weight, so many things that are out of our control. What's in our control right now in this moment? I actually was talking to somebody recently and they said, okay, well, I can't do that right now because I got to take care of my family and stuff. I'll wait. And I said, but what if it's possible for you to be more rested, more well taken care of, whatever that is in the moment, and you don't have to wait? And I think to your point, most people do not believe that to be true. I mean, that's the heart of so much of my work in the world is helping people not to believe it because I say it, but really to believe it from the inside out.
I was just envisioning like just a moving target as you were talking, because I can
Mhm.
relate to that so much. I am definitely guilty of, oh, I'm going to
Yeah,
be
we
happy
all
when I
are,
make this more money. Then it comes and I'm like, now I need some more money. Now.
right? Always, we're all. I mean, again, we're dipped in a capitalistic society. They don't want us to put our
Yes.
checkbook away.
Yes, yes. I can
Yeah.
definitely relate to that. And then if I lose this much weight, I'm going to be there. I'm going to
Mhm.
feel better mentally and emotionally. And you might, but
Yeah.
then you might find that you may not because there's something else
Yeah.
that you probably need to dig a little deeper. And as you mentioned, explore to see what could potentially be happening here.
Yeah.
So I like that you shared that. And also the story that you mentioned about the individual. It's a lot of times and I hear these stories often too. I'm going to wait till my kids graduate,
Uh-huh.
or
All
I
the
have
time.
to do this. And
Mhm.
sometimes in my mind, I'm like, but what if you just do this one thing for yourself?
Mhm.
Even if it's just a spa day, what
Mhm.
about just taking care of yourself? I've heard
Yeah.
stories of women who just have even just the smallest bit of guilt around that. Like,
Yeah.
well, I want to, but
Oh,
I'm gonna
yeah.
wait. Graduation's coming, so I'm gonna wait till my son graduates. And then when they
Yeah.
graduate, then
Yeah.
it still doesn't happen. So I would just love for us to be able to just, I don't know, maybe we need a meeting. Like all the women in the world need a meeting.
I'm in for the
And
meeting. You know,
yeah.
Ronnie, that and what you said about fear before and being in a box, fear doesn't want you to leave the box, right? There's a part
Yes.
of us that's wired to be in our comfort zone. I always say fear, if it sounded ridiculous, we wouldn't listen to it. But
Exactly.
it knows what we're afraid of and it says something it says it always sounds very plausible, like
Mhm.
hey, I'm going to wait till I pay off my debt or whatever,
Mhm.
whatever the answer is.
Mhm.
And so I always say we have to be really, really aware of what we're saying, I was like, it's not that you need to get in a fight with it or fix it, but you need to know that that's disguising, right? When people say self-sabotage and stuff like that, it's like there's a counter command going, oh, I really do want to feel more peaceful and rested and relaxed in my life. And then there's this command that is underneath that. Oh my God, if you did that, your family would crash and burn, or you wouldn't have any
Mhm.
money, or take people's biggest fears. And
Mhm.
it just becomes, again, I always call it just like the hamster wheel. You just go round and round and round. And you wonder, so many people are so frustrated when they get to me. They're like, Stacey, I've tried. I have tried. I have tried. I
Mhm.
have tried. What is going to make this different? And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, well, we're just going to get, I mean, my favorite life hack on the planet, we're going to get curious. We're going to pause and get curious, because there's probably a lot of things that are actually working. You're probably already doing things, we all are, that are feeding our well-being. And I don't think we even realize that. I remember years ago, I was going through my divorce, as I mentioned, and I always put my hand on my heart like this. And she said to
Mhm.
me one time, the therapist, counselor, she goes, did you know that this, when you do that, and I think it's actually both hands, but I usually just do one. She's like,
Mhm.
it calms your nervous system. That signals your body to relax. And I had no idea, but somewhere in me knew, right? Because
Yeah.
somewhere in me, when I would be really sharing these deep shares with her, would take that space to help my body really feel safe in that. And I think, again, that's another piece we want to, people will say, oh, intellectually, I get it all day long. Oh, I just need to do this and
Mm.
that. But if it's not working, if you're intellectually, you understand, which I think most of us do, but we're not actually creating the results we want, there's probably something more tender and
Mhm.
something from when we were younger. Not that we have to go over analyze it, but usually we learn about the world and how it operates from whenever we were when we were young. And then we take that into our whole life. And generally, as we get older, it doesn't work as well. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I love the topic of this podcast because I think so many women, get to midlife and go, wait a second,
Yes, yes,
right?
yes. Those things start
What?
to pop back up in midlife, those things that we
Wow.
didn't take care of. It's like,
Yeah,
"La da, I'm here, I'm still here." And
exactly.
now and now I'm gonna really show up because you didn't take care of me 20 years ago when you should have addressed these things. Now it's gonna
Yeah.
really show itself up in different areas, and you're just like, what is happening? I don't recall experiencing this before. However, if you really take some time to think about it, it's always been there. This mirror is in your face, in
Yeah.
front of you now, and it's something that you really have to deal with. So, yeah, I remember when I learned that, I was like, oh my God, that is so true. You get in midlife, and the things that you did not take care of,
And
they
that's
come back
okay
up.
too.
Yeah.
There were things, I mean, I was treading water in my 20s just to get out of an abusive childhood, and then I married into an abusive right? Like, so I thought I was
Hmm.
getting away and I was just recreating it. And people say to me all the time, do you regret, doing this and doing that? And I was like, I did the best I could in a moment.
You did the best you could. Yeah.
And we use whatever our coping skills, and this is what also we run up against in leaps of faith or just in coaching in general, is whatever we did when we were younger, we generally also use those coping mechanisms
Hmm.
as adults. And now they can get a little bit more sophisticated, right? But generally
Hmm.
speaking, once you start exploring that and you look at that and you look at it from a lens of like, of course, you're trying to get through and you did the best you can. You're young. You don't know
Yeah.
all the things that you know as you get older. That's the joy of being at midlife. You have all this wisdom that you can now direct it yourself in ways that, instead of going, oh my gosh, I wish, but now it's empowering. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
I see that, when I would get together with my family after, right, I was an adult, I would drink a little bit too much. I would eat a little bit too much. I always wanted to take the edge off.
Yeah.
And when I stopped doing that, trust me, it was really uncomfortable for a
Yeah. Yeah.
while. Yeah, but
Yeah.
but also too, I say that not to scare anybody, to say that when you do that, you're gonna, that mirror that you've been kind of like, "Oof, keep that in the back." It's going to be there to help you just be, I think, even more true to yourself in ways that are going to work, like I said, for your well-being and then everybody else around you too.
And you're right, because when we're younger, and that's something that I've had to also tell myself, I did the best that I could at
Yeah,
this time.
absolutely.
And you have to give yourself some grace. And I think that's
Yeah,
another thing, a whole other topic, but that's
yeah.
really working towards giving yourself grace, which sometimes we often see that is really hard. As a
Mhm.
lot of individuals get older, they still stay stuck in the past and they can't let it go and they don't know how to give themselves grace and say, I did the
Yeah.
best that I could at this time with what I had and what I was working with. But now I'm here and
Mhm.
I can give myself the grace and understanding and say, you know what, I don't have to repeat this now. I can move forward. I can let that
Yeah.
go so that I can move forward. I want to shift a little bit and talk
Yeah.
about balance. Yeah, balance and magic a little bit.
Mm.
How do you help women strike a balance between what is practical and
Mhm.
embracing life's magic when making significant life changes?
Ooh, that's a great question. Okay, well, here's my thing about balance, which I proclaimed one time. Somebody asked me, I was speaking at a college, and they asked me about balance. And I gave my very uncensored opinion that I don't know if there's a perfect balance we ever
Yes.
get, but that we're in rhythm with our lives, like the rhythm or the
Mm-hmm.
season of our life. How are we flowing in ways that really feel right for us? Because again,
Mm-hmm.
whatever is out there isn't necessarily what is best for us. So making those tweaks and things around that. So I have a little bit of a like around balance, but I love the idea of harmony. That's my new word lately, is like how can we be in harmony, which is like all the pieces again
Yeah.
flow together. And I think that when you're starting to talk about kind of magic and synchronicities and kind of the world that beyond just what we can see with our eyes,
Mm-hmm.
I think actually everybody has a beautiful access to it, whether we're paying attention to that, whether we're inviting it in. I just always start with play and have fun. I always say pick something that does not have any huge significance in your life at this point and ask for a sign. Like it could be a bumper sticker in the car in front of you driving. You could a song on the radio, right? All of a sudden a lyric stands out at you. Or a friend you haven't talked to in 6 months calls you and says, I really felt like I needed to tell you something, whatever it
Yeah.
is. Those signs to me are all around us. And if we're not really playing with them, we lack confidence. Is it correct? Is it correct? Is it correct? This people
Mm-hmm.
ask me that constantly. It's like, how do I know? How do I know? I was like, you have to kind of play this game of trusting yourself. That's where start in a place where if you're like, ooh, like I could go to the beach this weekend, or I could go to the woods in the forest, and then just be like, ooh, how do I play with that in a way? Ask for a sign, be open to messages around you. I think that it just becomes like, again, when you're not feeling the pressure of
Mm-hmm.
something, because I don't believe that it's like something outside of you telling you it. To me, it's all this extension of love and you and your heart. And it's to your point about the mirror, it's mirroring back something. It's like, oh, this is what you really desire. And it just is helping you remember that. So signs and
Mm-hmm.
messages and things like that are me. I like to think I put like some breadcrumbs in the all along to be like, oh, if you get a little lost here, go over here and go
Yeah.
that way and what have you. And so it becomes this fun practice. And I remember when I was being trained as a master coach, I had an experience. We were doing some equus coaching. Have you heard of that with
Uh-uh.
horses? Oh,
I have not.
it's incredible. Very, very, very powerful. Horses are what you can do in a session, in like, I don't know, 3 sessions with a coach.
Mhm.
A horse is going to like literally bring it really concisely, like in a half an hour, 45 minutes with a horse. They have magic, like, not that you can't do it with the humans, it just is a very different kind of
Yeah,
container.
yeah.
And something was going on where I swore a horse called to me from the field and said, I'm going to be your horse when it comes time. And I had this same thing like, oh my gosh, I'm just making this up. Who do I think I am? A horse isn't
Mhm.
talking to me, right? All of these things are happening, right? And I'm like, And the day, so we started in the morning, the day is going on, horses are coming, but not my horse. Horses are coming, lunchtime, the horses in like not in the, most people's horses that we were doing this with, because all of us were having our own one-on-one experience with individual
Mm-hmm.
horses. We're all in the barn. My horse was like nowhere near the barn. And I kept thinking, Stacey, this is insane that this is true. So lo and behold, I was one of the last people to go. They bring in my horse, and it's the horse from the field. I lose my mind because I'm like, ah, right? Like part of me knew it, but part of me was doubting myself and all of
Yeah.
that. And it was like, and the horse, this is the beautiful thing about horses. They mirror back your energy. And so the horse started like running around, like just like uncontrolled, like running and bucking. And I was in the ring with it. Now, again,
Mm-hmm.
I'm safe the whole time. I don't want anybody to think I was safe. However, I was having a meltdown. The horse was mirroring back my meltdown. And I was like, and on the other side, when I got, you have a coaching session after the actual like experience, I remember thinking like, I'm doubting my magic. I'm doubting that that was true. And Martha Back, who was my life coach that trained me, and she said to me, she said, when a hitter goes up to bat, right, in a baseball game, if they're a great hitter, their batting average is like, I don't know, 333, 400 is like probably the high, right? Like a high batting average. And she goes, you
Mm-hmm.
know what that means? For every 10 times that the batter goes up to bat, 3 times, 4 times they get a hit. 5 times, 6 times, they're not. Now maybe they're doing
Mm-hmm.
something else. Maybe they're getting hit and getting, but they're not getting a hit.
Yeah.
And she said we seem to have this belief that if it doesn't work 100% of the time, it's not real. There was
Mm-hmm.
something about that, Ronnie, for me. Now that was years ago. There's something about at that experience with the horse, and then that coaching around that for me. That again, I use this in my life in ways that I feel like it enhances and complements my life. Does it mean I throw, like, I'm not going to just run a red light, right? Because, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, I feel like, no, I'm going to pay attention to the world we live in too. And I think that is that's the fun in playing. And it doesn't have to be imperfect. Like, you don't have to get it so perfectly right. You're going to maybe go a little bit here and then you'll adjust.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're really listening to yourself and how it's working for you, you'll make those adjustments, or you'll realize oh, okay, I want to just have a second opinion that's more practical. Or,
Yeah.
right, like you can put both of them together in ways that can work for you. But that's my example because I literally was like, ah, and the horse was like, yeah, this is what we're here to help you help you work on today.
I love that. I wonder, it make me, I was kind of envisioning the horse running around when you were talking about it. And I started thinking about myself, like, what would a horse do around me? They probably would faint because I would be like, oh my God, here's a horse. I'm about to pass out. So
Are
it
you
would
nervous?
probably,
Are you nervous? Because we did have a
I
couple people that are
am.
nervous. Yeah.
I am very nervous. And
Yeah.
so he would probably like, I don't want to be around this lady. She's too nervous for me. So that would definitely
They
be
might
something
they
that
might go yeah. Yeah.
I would have to work through. So
And
yeah.
then what they do, Roddy, is what they'll say, right? The coaches are specifically trained, right, to use
Mhm.
horses. These are not just, they are generally life coaches, but they have this additional training. They'll say something like this to you: get the horse to walk over to you. You're like, wait, but what?
Oh yeah.
How do I ever get a horse to walk
Yes.
over to me? And so, but this is what happens. You get into your body. To your point, you have to be really grounded and really clear. It doesn't mean you can't be nervous, but you need to
Mhm.
be really clear about your own, what your intention is, what you're feeling, what's going on with you, so that again, eventually that I did get that horse to calm down and do all the things. Go this way, go that way, come over. It was really, really an interesting thing because most of us, again, we want to control in that situation. We're
Yeah.
afraid. And what happens is the more we try to control, the more the horse goes in the opposite direction.
Yes.
So we have to breathe down into that place of surrender, like we've talked about, allowing, letting go of that control, and knowing we're safe. Like, your nervous system has to believe it's safe in that space. And then so many magical things. That horse came over and hugged me at the end, right? Like we had this moment. It was the most incredible moment because, especially how it started, there was this bond between him and
Hmm.
me. And I had to get clear my own space before we could have that interaction.
I love that. Now I am gonna want to go and try that out,
I highly recommend.
but make sure that I am like really grounded and, centered and all of that good stuff so
Mhm.
that I don't run this horse crazy and I'm like, this lady is crazy, but I would
It's
love to
okay
have
if
that
it happens that
experience.
way.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
have to have it come
Yeah.
to me and really learn those tools. I think that's pretty cool. I like that. I
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
a really
So,
cool experience. Interestingly enough, another thing we did with Martha was she had us bending spoons, but not with your might, right? Like you were
mhm.
supposed to bend it, like not using your head either, although that's what everybody thinks. Oh, you use your head. No, you have to go into a place where and I tried for like we were doing this activity for an hour. I could not do it. And I was so mad because and embarrassed because people around me, right? My friends are doing this, all this stuff, and how come I can't bend the spoon and you name it. And then I went for a walk. We were out in California at this event, and I went for a walk on the beach, and I just what I call kind of dropping into my own self and
Mhm.
energy. And I said, okay, of course you felt that way. You want it right. We all want to perform. We want to get it right. We want to look like, look, I did it. And I was like, but out there where I was by myself, I was like, this is just for you. This is about you and only
Yeah.
you. I bent that spoon like it was butter. So it's so interesting. Again, when we're forcing things, magic doesn't work that way. We it's
Yeah.
it's inviting an energy of playfulness with things in a way that isn't like, I need you to, just like we're saying about the other things, I need you to tell me what to do. It's really saying, you know what to do. We're just helping you unlock that wisdom. And when you believe that to be true within you, or again, doesn't have to be 100% belief, but you really do open to that possibility that you're very powerful energy in and of yourself, it's like a whole new world opens up. And I'm
Yeah.
like, why wouldn't we use all of that at our disposal
Yeah.
with everything else we know?
Yeah, so it's sounds like it's, having this energy inside of you. And it made me think of too of a class I was in a few weeks ago, and we were kind of talking about if you believe whether you believe you can or believe you cannot, either way you're right. And I forget who says that quote, but
Yeah,
it made me think about that. And so what you believe about yourself will come forward
yeah.
and that energy will come forward. And so it sounds like you guys went to another place,
Mhm.
especially with the bending of the spoons, because in my mind, I was
Yeah.
thinking, how is she bending the spoon? And so you had to go somewhere internally. I'm over here like, is she bending, like literally bending a spoon? I was about to
You are
ask you, what was
literally
your
bending this.
superpower?
Yes. We all have the power to do it.
Yeah,
It takes a little bit of time because we're trying
yeah,
to do it with our head, right? It's
yes,
this oneness energy. It really, like, this is how it got described. It's like, ask the spoon if it wants to play with you. And you're like, but you're trying logically then to like, oh, like I'm gonna, but it's this other energy, and it's. I find it very easy to access when I'm out just taking a walk. If I'm at the beach, like
yeah,
think about places where you just feel like, ah, when you're in that energy, that's the space. And so often when we're walking around the world doing our thing in the world every day, we're not. We're making plans. We have to-do lists. We're going, 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 and so I try to carve out time intentionally to be in that space, not for it to do anything for me, but just
Mhm.
then you're keeping that channel open, right? You're like, I'm turning my dial to that radio frequency
Yeah.
and attuning to it. And the more you do that, the more you practice that. That's a big part of Deepak Chopra's work, meditation, and doing that through
Mhm.
meditation. The more you do that, the more it's just going to naturally start to come to you in ways that you're just, again, every client, you're never going to believe the wild thing that just happened. And I'm like, I am
Yeah.
always the one that will believe it.
Yes, I love that. I love what you just shared there, and
Thank you.
I'm definitely gonna look into that and explore that a little bit more too. I One of the things about me is that I try to do meditation and stuff. My downfall is I get sleepy. And so that's one of my
Mhm.
goals is to kind of really start small with 3 minutes or
Mhm.
maybe 1 minute and then just kind of work and build my way up just because of the research that's behind it and how it's really helpful for women as we
Yeah.
navigate midlife and going through perimenopause and those going through
Yes.
menopause. It's really been shown to be effective. And so I said, you know what? This is another piece that you can incorporate to kind of help you as
Yeah.
well. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that and about the energy and just taking time each day to be in that space.
Yeah.
And I think that we all could benefit from taking some time each day to just find that space. I kind of view that space as a way of, as like a little moment of self care too
Mm.
for
Mhm.
yourself. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be where you're spending money or doing something,
Yeah.
outrageous. We're going,
Yeah.
not outrageous, I would say, but it doesn't have to be a spa day.
Yeah.
It just can be those small little bitty moments, just a few minutes a day where you're just putting yourself in that space. And so
I
that's
agree.
what's coming up for me as you were
Mm.
talking.
Even
As
5
we
minutes. Even
Yeah,
sorry.
even 5
Even 5,
minutes.
like,
Yeah.
I tell people start with 5 minutes, and I would also say, Ronnie, too, if you're falling asleep, I would kinda say maybe your body wants to give you a message. Sometimes we fall asleep because I swear the brain needs to get bypassed for something.
Mhm.
And now if you're always falling asleep, but I think sometimes like letting whatever happens happens and kind of see where you go now. And again, always of course defer to your best knowing, but I
Yeah.
fallen asleep sometimes too, and it feels like there's some kind of almost like a dream state where there's something, and I'm like my brain would never have allowed this. So it's like, okay, well, shut her down, shut the brain down, so we can make sure that she's got access. So it could be something to play around with.
Yeah, I'll think about that. I will definitely
Okay.
remember that too and think about that because I always just fall asleep. I
Yeah.
just don't know what that's about. And so, yeah, I'll play around with that and see what I can come up with. So
Okay.
thank you for sharing that with me.
You're welcome.
As we begin our wrapping up today,
Mhm.
I would love to know if you have any practical steps or strategies that women can begin to incorporate if they are considering taking their own leaps of faith.
Ooh, I love that question. So I think right where we just
Mhm.
were is carve out some space for yourself every day. And I think 5 minutes can be super, super effective because if you want to really get clear about it, I think you have to make the space for yourself, like you said. I like the idea of like a bookend, like how you start your
Mhm.
day and how you end your day. So even if you did like 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes at night, I think it's just a beautiful gift to yourself. So there's no pressure. It's not like, oh, I have to figure out this leap or whatever. I'm just going to hang
Yeah.
out in here. If something wants to just kind of come through or I'm feeling things, I'm just going to notice what I'm thinking about as in this time. And I think a lot of times if you are thinking about a leap of faith and you know you want, I always say, if you can get support, why not? It's like
Mhm.
if you're going to go down a whitewater rafting trip, right, down the rapids, and you could go down yourself, but you could
Yeah.
hire a guide who knows all the tricks and what have you. I'm always like, hey, I would love to have the guide if that's the case, because what that does is it creates a container, and there's a lot of generally just questions, right? Like,
Mhm.
what's already working in your life? That's a beautiful question to ask yourself. Where is it already feel really wonderful? And I always, a lot of times I'll start with an activity too, where people think about their ideal day. maybe 3, 6 months, a year, not too far
Mhm.
out, but like if you could do whatever you wanted to do, money's not like, right? Like your ideal day might be, you're designing something in a beautiful city in Europe and you're sipping espresso. When you start to write that out and you get really detailed, I always say, think of all the senses. What does it smell like? What does it taste like? What does it look like? If you, after you do an exercise like that, if you go down and you kind of drill down, what feelings or what adjectives could you use to describe your day? So if you don't mind me asking you, Ronnie, if you
Mhm.
were going to say traveling and designing, like what's an adjective that comes to mind for you when you're thinking about that space?
Ooh. Oh, that's a good one. I would say happiness and joy. That's a good one. I really need to explore that question, like joy and
Mhm.
peace. I feel like I would be in my zone.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel different when I think about that in my like internally. I feel like if I could be in that space, it feels like a sense of freedom just to be in that space.
Mm.
That's how I feel. Even just talking about it, it's like I can feel like, man, I just feel peaceful. Seems like when you're really doing your thing, it's just there's a sense of peace that you
Yeah.
get.
I love that. And so again, if you were my client in this regard, I would say to you, where do you already feel that feeling in your life now? Where does that piece show up? And it might not show up exactly on the same,
Yeah.
it's a spectrum. So maybe if that piece feels like a 10, maybe this piece that you're talking about feels like a 3 or 4, but there are breadcrumbs already in our lives where we're again, because we naturally want, right, to draw ourselves to that freedom,
Yeah.
peace, joy. And so when you start to say, I mean, I want everybody to have their ideal day as a
Mhm.
reality, but it becomes this roadmap or blueprint of like when you get to the end of the day and you're doing a little reflection, it's like, where did I feel the most free today? Where did I feel that energy of that
Mm.
zone today? And then you can start to, again, you can be more intentional and make choices around, like, I would say to people, I want you to just do 10 minutes more of whatever that thing is. Instead of taking something out, start with just amplifying what's already there. Then if you
Mhm.
say, of all the things you're doing in the last week, what's the one thing that sucks the freedom, right? All drains it all out. Can
Yeah.
you do that a little less? Can that be where, you start to play with that in ways that's not we're not asking huge, ginormous, like this is leaps of faith. It starts very, very small and it starts very, very intentional and it anchors always to those frequencies that you just captured. We didn't even script it. You captured it in such a beautiful way. That's the blueprint where you go next from there.
Nice. Those are really good coachable questions too, to help someone really kind of get in that zone and explore. And
Yeah.
I like that. All right, you're gonna have my mind going a little bit today.
Okay, well, circle back with me anytime. I would
I
love. I
will.
would
I definitely will. Thank you for
love.
sharing so much wisdom
Oh,
today. I
for
know we
having me.
talked a lot about, yeah, you're welcome. Anytime. You are always welcome to come and chat with us and just talk more about this and anything else. This was great. This was a really great discussion. I really appreciated our talk about trusting that inner wisdom. Also, really trusting that inner wisdom, your gut, and taking like those practical leaps of faith and really how
Yeah.
to find a balance. And I learned so much. I'm just trying to sum it all up. This was amazing. And those questions now just have my mind just kind of going like
Right?
in a hamster
There's
wheel a
so
little
much
bit. So,
so much fun to contemplate, and you don't need a coach to do that. You can do that. You're listening right now, you can go off and spend some time, go for a walk, write in a journal, whatever, have a cup of coffee with somebody you love and play the game together.
yeah,
It opens up, and that's the access to the magic, right? So the
yeah.
practicality says all the other things. And to me, one of the reasons why I wanted to be on this podcast with you is Midlife to me is this big invitation for us. It's like,
Mhm.
hey, we've been doing things. Maybe you climbed one mountain, you took care of your family, you've done all these things. Now it's almost like it's knocking louder to be like, now is the time. And it's not about judging, like you said, it's lots of grace for wherever you found yourself in this moment. You haven't missed it. It hasn't passed you
Yeah.
by. You're not too old. You're the perfect person in this moment to explore all this and to create it. I always say, until we're at the very last breath. I had a client one time, 88 years old. She's getting coached. I was like, if you're getting coached at 88, she's like, I still have things I want to, work on and do. And I'm like, I love it. And so we all can take from that energy. It's so inspiring.
Yeah, thank you so much. Your insights have really and undoubtedly inspired our listeners. It's also inspired me as
Thank you.
well. And I'm sure after hearing this episode, everyone will say, you know what? Let me really think about what leaps of faith have I been wanting to take and I've just been putting to the side, or I've been allowing fear to stand in the way. And so I appreciate you sharing with us today. Again, would love to have you back anytime.
Ronnie, you got to come
Yes.
and be on my podcast.
I will do it. I will do it. Let's make it
Okay.
happen. I will do that.
It's
But
a date. It's definitely
yes,
a
it's a
date.
date. Let me know. Shoot me the info and we can make
Okay.
that happen. But I definitely
Thank
appreciate you being here today and
you.
for all the work that you're doing to help individuals really find
Thank
their
you.
passion. So I love that. All
Thank you
right,
so much.
everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I will drop Stacey's information down in the show notes for you all to follow her on social media and to view her website. Until next time, I will see you all later. That's a wrap for this episode of Navigating Life After 40. I hope you enjoyed this conversation just as much as I did. If you love what you're hearing, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. This helps me to reach more amazing women like yourself who are trying to navigate this amazing life. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, keep living your best life.